We are live. What is up, swimmers and swammers? Welcome to the 2025 World Championships official swim swam preview for the women's side of the meet. I'm Coleman Hodges, joined by the swim scribe himself, David Clossy, and the dirty double, Brendan Burns. Thanks, guys, for coming on and and seriously nerding out for the next 60 to 90 minutes over World Championships. This is the most exciting meet of the year. All the cards are laid on the table. Everyone's gearing up for it. We're starting this competition on Sunday. So we are going through the entry lists right now and previewing event by event the women's half of the meet. So we're going down the entry list in order. This isn't in order as the events happen. This is just in the order of entry lists. So we start with a really fun one, the women's 50 freestyle. David, I'm going to ask you to kick this one off. Just what are you excited to see in this women's 50 free? We've got a few sub 24s already on the entry list. Who do you see coming out on top? Who do you see taking up the podium?
Yeah, obviously immediately those three 23-second swims from Gretchen Walsh, Meg Harris, and Tori Husk stand out, and we got a pretty quick field behind them. And it seems like those seem to be the biggest threats to fill at that podium. And I think the biggest question is kind of what order. And for me, one storyline that's going to be kind of interesting to follow just as the meet goes on, right, is Gretchen Walsh, her ability to translate into the world championship meet, the performances she's had before, because I know it's been a big goal of hers kind of season is getting faster at finals, getting faster at the big meet at the end of the year. And in particular, that freestyle. We know we've seen her translate her butterfly into the long course pool. And now it seems like the next step for her to really hit what it feels like she's capable of in terms of medal potential, medal hauls, is seeing it in that freestyle. And I feel like between the 50 and 100 freestyle, the best chance for Gretchen Walsh to try and get something seriously fast done is in that 50 freestyle, just because she's got that speed, after she propels herself with, underwater after probably the slowest reaction time in the field. But she is probably the best example of the fact that reaction time is not everything in the start, because everything after she finally leaves the sensor on the box is incredible, translates that speed really well underwater. And I think in a tight field like we're potentially seeing here, that early speed can kill, because you escape that wash really quickly. And, it's not as big a deal because you don't need to worry about hitting it in a turn or anything like that. But in a 50, every 100 can count. So it might end up being a theme later on, but I'm feeling good about Gretchen Walsh here, just because I think if part of it's me hoping that we see some good long course freestyle development, and I think the 50 is the best chance for us to see that happen.
Brendan, any additional thoughts on this women's 50 free?
Yeah, David, that was a really expert breakdown. Definitely agree with a lot of your big points there. I'm looking further down the psych sheet at a couple of youngsters, Sarah Curtis, Olivia Wunsch, and Eva Ocaro from Italy, Australia, and Great Britain, respectively. They've had some pretty solid success in their home countries. And I'm looking to see if maybe they can sneak into the final and potentially even on that medal stand. I think that medal stand is pretty locked up with those big three names at the top, but who knows? They're so young. They've had some pretty promising trajectories as of late, and it'll be interesting to see what they can do.
You stole my exact point, Brendan. I was going to highlight those three. I'm glad you did, David. To hit your point a little bit, I think it's funny how, to me, Gretchen's long course trajectory has almost mirrored Caleb Dressel's in that she's so dominant in butterfly. She's really good in the 50 free. Her 100 free is still kind of coming along, and I think for Caleb, his weakest, or maybe most impervious to defeat in a long course event was typically the 100 free, where as the 50 and the 100 fly, he was 50 free and 100 fly, he was a little more dominant. So really excited to see, as you mentioned, Gretchen Walsh's specifically freestyle at this meet. I think it's safe to say she's going to clean up in butterfly, or that's the expectation at this point, but excited to see her freestyle. I'm also excited, as well as the youngsters, like Brendan mentioned, I'm excited to see a couple of the older swimmers. Kasha Wasik has been 24, or is entered with a 24-2. I think she's 32 or 33 at this point. and she could get back on the medal podium, as well as Beryl Gastadello, who's seemed to have gotten better and better as she's aged as well. So excited to see the youth versus the age in this event, but the top with Walsh, Meg Harris, and Tori Husk, it's going to be hard for anyone else to break through on that podium, I think. And that's the women's 50 free. I think that's good. Let's move on to the 100 freestyle. We have, I don't even know if she's the reigning world champion because of 2024, but we got Molly O'Callaghan entered at 52.2. We have Tori Husk also there at 52.2. Siobhan Howie is now out with a back injury, I believe, but we've got a plethora of 52s in there, a lot of 53 lows as well. Brendan, I'll kick this one to you first. Who do you like in this event? What are you excited to see?
Yeah, it's a shame that Siobhan Hahi pulled out of the meet. She was someone that obviously medalist in this as well as the 200 freestyle over a course of a couple different big-time international meets. But with her absence, as well as I believe Marit Steenbergen from the Netherlands has pulled out of this event to focus on backstroke. Is that correct?
I think we reported that, but keep talking while I confirm that.
So with those two absences, that puts Gretchen Walsh into the third seed heading into this meet. You know, if it was a full field, I think Gretchen would have had an interesting time trying to find the podium, but now it kind of looks like she's in striking distance of potentially taking a world title away from Molly O'Callaghan or Tori Husk. Tori, that incredible 100 free silver last summer in Paris, was one of the best swims of the entire meet, probably one of the most underrated. So I think it's going to be a really tight field. I kind of like O'Callaghan just because she has the experience and she seems to really come through when it matters most, but it's going to be another great race like the 50.
Yeah, I think with this post-Olympic World Championships, as we see a lot, there's a lot of room for parity. You know, Molly's been dealing with an injury. She looked okay at Australian trials, but we're going to see really how much that has hindered her, how much that's hindered her training this year, and just, you know, how much she maybe let off the gas because of the injury, as well as just being a post-Olympic year. To your point, Brendan, Marit Steenbergen, no 200 free or 200 IM, but yes to 100 free.
Okay.
So she does come in as the fourth seed, and I think that will be one of her focus events, that the 100 back, and she'll also be in the 50, but I don't think she's a favorite to maybe even semifinal in that one. But I am really excited to see, again, Molly O'Callaghan versus Gretchen Walsh and Tori Husk, honestly, just because Tori Husk may be a bit of a surprise medalist in Paris last summer in this, and she's only gotten better this year. Gretchen Walsh, again, continuing her ascent in this long course. I mean, I think the American women will win the 400 free relay, in my opinion. And so with that momentum heading into the meet, especially heading into this event specifically, especially when you have two stud freestylers kind of flanking Molly, how that is going to play out. Really excited to see that race. But I think those three look really strong in terms of podiuming and winning medals in this event. David, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with your take on those three of Tori Husk, Gretchen Walsh, and Molly O'Callaghan. And, you know, just repeat my same points from the 50 free when it comes to Gretchen Walsh's freestyle. But I do think that a very interesting battle that we're going to see is between Tori Husk and Molly O'Callaghan, because, you know, they're very close in those entry times there, you know, 52.24 to 52.29. Of course, you know, Tori Husk surprised for that silver medal behind Sarah Sostrom, who is not present here. And, you know, kind of part of that ascent shut O'Callaghan out of the medals in Paris. And so it'll be interesting to see how, because obviously we know that O'Callaghan's been able to perform on the big stage before, but that's something I really associate with Tori Husk, that she is, you know, she reminds me of Simone Manuel in a lot of ways when it comes to that kind of clutch factor of, oh, it's a final, drop half a second off of what you think she's going to go, and you're probably closer to it. Just because she's, you know, that surprise medal, dethroned Gretchen Walsh in the 100 fly there. Has had some big 100 fly swims at other meets too. And, you know, again, Molly O'Callaghan has had incredible swims on the world stage before. I feel like I associate that clutch factor a little bit more Tori Husk, and I'm feeling her for a gold medal favorite here. I think she's going to upgrade that silver to a gold at this meet.
What I am personally bummed that Simone Manuel got third in this event at trials. I would have loved her to see her get an individual swim, because she's also been making quite the ascent back to her, maybe pre 2021 form, which has been awesome to see. I think she'll be a stud on the relays. And this, again, I think we're going to see a lot of young talent. Sarah Curtis, Olivia Wunsch, sorry. It'll be interesting to see how many women get under that 53 barrier. And I think it will be quite a deep field, even though we're missing some of those freestyle stalwarts, starting with soon to be mom, Sarah Sjostrom. But hey, that's the 100 freestyle. Once again, should be a really good race. I think the 200 free on paper might be a little more cut and dry. When we're saying, I think I could see Molly O'Callaghan getting challenged in the 100 freestyle, it's pretty much the opposite for this 200 free. She is almost 2.5 seconds ahead of second seed Claire Weinstein, with Siobhan Howie pulling out. And they are the only two swimmers who are entered at under the 155 barrier. So I think it's safe to say Molly O for the win in this one. But if you guys have hot takes, don't let me stop you there. But who do you see on the podium? David, I'll toss this one to you first.
I do not have a hot take here. Molly Callahan, of course, the former world record holder, and 152.48 is a scary entry time. And of course, she is, she's been very accomplished in this event before. And I just don't see, especially with Siobhan Howie not in this field, I don't know who's going to be able to challenge her for the win here. I do think it'd be cool if we see a big swim out of Claire Weinstein, as she's now effectively bumped up into that second seed there. And that's, and that also pulls Erin Gemmel closer to the seed times for medals, as we're looking at the American swimmers there too. And I was thinking that I feel like there's a good amount of racing that can be done for those minor medals here. We have, after Claire Weinstein with that 54.8, we have 55.1, 55.2, 55.2, 55.4, 55.4. There's Jamie Perkins and Erica Fairweather are 100th of a second away from each other on that site sheet. And in a 200 freestyle in particular, we can be a lot more tactical, have a lot more racing. 200, I think, is one of my favorite distances. So a 200, 400 is like the sweet spot for watching swimming, in my opinion, just because it's just fast enough to be really exciting, but also enough to see some big moves. And I think that that final and maybe even the semifinal, seeing as how deep down that could potentially go for those final 8 spots, could be really exciting to watch.
Brendan, thoughts on that podium?
I mean, you guys summed it up well. This is the Molly O show. She, whether it's half a second or close to 3 seconds, I really don't think she's going to be challenged all that much in this one. I will say, I think for me, watching Claire Weinstein's ascension to kind of a true bona fide star for Team USA, I think it's an if, not a when. Or sorry, it's a when, not an if she gets that 200 free American record. So that could be on watch here. If she has another great drop from trials, then that could totally be in contention. Allison Schmidt, 2012, was at 153.6 in that range.
I think so. Yeah, 6 or 7. Yeah,
so
right there.
It's a steep drop, but she's definitely very young and someone that's on the rise very, very fast. So I don't think that's totally out of the equation. I really like her to make the podium, but I think it's Molly O all the way.
Yeah, 150. You were dead on, Brendan. 153.6 for Allison Schmidt's American record from London in 2012. I just want to make a note that Molly O is 2.4 seconds ahead of Claire Weinstein, and if you go, so that's first to second seed. If you go another 2.4 seconds, that is the next 14 swimmers. So that is the difference from first to second and second to 15th, roughly. So there's a lot of room, I think, for people to move up. I'm excited to see Brazil's tandem, Maria Fernanda de Oliveira and Stephanie Balducini, to see what they can do. Hungary has a great tandem, Mina Abraham and Nicolette Padar. Obviously, the U.S. look really strong with Claire Weinstein and Erin Gemmel, but I feel like, for minor medals, it could go a lot of different ways, and we're going to see, I think, someone kind of come out and have a coming out party of sorts for at least one of those medals. But Molly O'Callaghan, strong favorite. moving on to the women's 400 freestyle. I will say it. I think Summer McIntosh is going to win. But this is Ledecky v. McIntosh, round 1. We'll get to see it at the beginning of the meet, and we'll get to bookend it, and we'll get to see it at the end of the meet with them going head-to-head in the women's 800 free, which will be really exciting. But Ledecky is having the best season she's had in maybe 8 years, and McIntosh now is perhaps one of the had one of the all-time performances ever at the Canadian trials. She broke the world record 354.1. And now they get to go head to head in Singapore. And historically, McIntosh has not gotten faster from trials to a bigger meet, or at least not in all of her events, certainly not in this 400 freestyle. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see a very on-form Katie Ledecky versus a very on-form Summer McIntosh. But I think Summer gets it. I think Katie Ledecky second. We've got 2 other women who have dipped under the 4-minute barrier, but I'll stick with Brendan Burns's point earlier. I like Claire Weinstein for bronze, who was 4:00.05 at US trials. I think she gets under that 4-minute barrier in Singapore as well. Brendan, I'll toss it to you. How do you see this 400 free going?
I like that analysis. I'll piggyback off of the Weinstein take. It's also a shame that Weinstein might break 4 minutes and then also finish off the podium. That's just kind of the top 5 in this event, kind of historically all-time great. And yeah, I'd like to pick McIntosh to win this. I think it's a very safe bet. I don't, world record holder this year. Why would you bet against her? Even if she's off a little bit, Ledecky, maybe she has some of her life and catches her, but I think Ledecky is just at this point in her career is just more geared upwards to the 800 and definitely the 1500. So I think it'll be another great race. They really love racing each other. It's definitely going to be one of the highlights of the meet. But I think it's McIntosh's race all the way.
David?
Yeah. I really like the way that this, for those following along with the psych sheet at home, because there's a page break right after McIntosh and Ledecky, and that pretty much sums up how this race is going to go with those 2, and then a big gap, and then everyone else, because that is going to be hopefully an awesome battle between those 2 at the top end there. I do think that McIntosh, it's hard to bet against not only the reigning world record holder, but somebody who set the world record and smashed that world record this season, even if she gains, just based on seed times, right? If she gained 2 seconds, if Ledecky matches that seed time, she still got it fairly healthily. And, Ledecky isn't always, she goes so fast in season, she's not always a lock to drop at the end of the season either. So, I think that's going to be a cool tactical race. And then just Lonnie Pallister, Li Bingji, and Claire Weinstein all right there racing for that bronze medal. And that's going to be one of the fastest bronze medal races I think we'll see. I like Claire Weinstein, but I do think that we're going to see Lonnie Pallister grab that bronze just because she lit it up at Australian trials to break that barrier for the first time. And I think that she is going to continue that momentum, because I think we might see her after she's jumped forward a bit in speed. Now that she's occupying this new threshold, try and push the pace a little bit more. She knows more what she can do, and sometimes in a slightly longer race like that, 400 and up, that can be enough to be, know where you need to be a little bit more aggressive, know how you felt at the end of that race to really dial in that race plan for it. But I think, 4th and even 5th place are going to be very quick behind whoever ends up winning the bronze, unless someone jumps down to try and push McIntosh and Ledecky, but I don't see that one happening.
I mean, what a treat that would be. I will say, if you've ever listened to me on this podcast, you know that I am a big proponent of home court advantage. And I will say Lonnie Pallister being from Australia, Li Bingji being from China, Singapore, not very far from either, especially when you compare it to the United States. So I think they've got that going for them, and they've obviously both swam really well at their trials, both win 3:59. So yeah, that race for bronze, it will be a barn burner, I think. Okay, part 2 of McIntosh versus Ledecky in the women's 800 freestyle. Ledecky comes in with the world record 804.12. McIntosh comes in 805.07 from the Canadian trials. And Pallister comes in at 810.8, one of the fastest performances in history. Right now, there's the three prohibitive favorites. We're going to see how the meet goes. It's going to be at the end of the meet. I don't think it's at the very end, but I actually have the schedule up. Hold on. But it's certainly towards the end of the meet, but especially for Summer McIntosh, it'll be after a lot of races. And so I think I'm going Ledecky on this one. It's on day 7. So McIntosh chasing 5 individual golds in 5 individual events. Ledecky has 3 individual events and a relay. I don't even know how many events relays Summer has. I like Ledecky in this. She's been having a great season, and she also is a racer, and not that Summer's not, but we've seen her in situations where it's tight, and she knows how to swim this race front to back. She knows what she needs to do in any given situation to get her hand on the wall first, again, especially in an 800 and up. So I like her for this. If Summer just goes out and kind of blasts it, then I think she can win. But if it comes down to a tight race, I honestly like Ledecky because she is so much more experienced in this event than Summer is. But hopefully it'll be really exciting either way. Brendan, what are you excited for about this one?
Yeah, I mean, here it is. This is the big one. Probably, hopefully, the race of the meet. At least on the women's side, if not both sides. Classic story of immovable object versus unstoppable force. Immovable object, obviously being Ledecky. She's wrote the book on this event. She is the principal author of the 800 freestyle. But McIntosh, obviously, probably the best overall women's swimmer in the world right now. And she threw down that 805. That was absolutely no joke. And, they raced at that senior champs meet in Florida where McIntosh did defeat Ledecky. But it'll be interesting to see how McIntosh responds now, swimming this event on a really big stage when she's probably really, really tired. Ledecky's definitely going to be a little bit tired also, but McIntosh just has an absolute monster schedule where Ledecky, as she's aged, she kind of smartly phased out of 200 freestyle individually to focus on the medals or focus on the events where she can really win a medal. And I just hope it lives up to the hype. I mean, this is just 2 absolute heavyweights going head to head. Let's just hope it's a good one. I'm going to pick Ledecky.
Yeah. David?
Yeah, I think that this is definitely for me, at least going into it, race of the meet for either men or women. This is the one that I am the most heavily anticipating. And I mean, who would have thought that we would see not only Ledecky break a world record in this event at this point in her career, but also that same season to be like, is she going to win gold? There's someone who might be able to push her. The fact that there's now, for the first time ever, there's someone within a second of her. That's crazy. And truly. I do think that if McIntosh is going to win this, she's going to need to win this from the front because she is going up to the top end of her range, whereas Ledecky can go up to the 1500 distance. And normally Ledecky does like to control this race from the front, even at times where we've seen her off her best, whether it was 2019 and she was off her game, or just on, where she's been a little bit slower and Titmus has been a little faster and kind of been within a second, 2 seconds of her. Ledecky has still controlled that and probably could have pushed it a bit more if she absolutely needed to, was being a bit more tactical. So it's going to be interesting if we actually get to see Ledecky race this 800 from behind. Is she going to kind of stay within her body length, stay on her hip, not let her get too far away, let her tire herself up, then make a move at 600 meters? Or is she going to try and go, no, you're not taking this lead from me. I'm staying in front. And maybe they're both going to push it really hard in the front end. And I think if they do that, I think, if she's able to get Summer to the point where she needs to exert more energy to either keep up with her earlier on in the meet or to keep a comfortable lead on her, might be able to tire her out a bit more because Ledecky's going to have that back half more and just the experience in racing this race. I mean, she's been here so many times in her career, not just in the gold medal position, not just as the one with the massive target on her back, but also performing at this level. You know, McIntosh is still experimenting with this event. He only recently even added it and committed to swimming it as her 5th event. I think there's at one point she said, "It's like, I don't really like swimming it, but I'm good at it," which I think is how most distance swimmers are created. And I think this is going to be an interesting race no matter what, but I do think that just that experience from Ledecky is going to be too tough to overcome. And I think she remains the favorite because history has proven that it's not smart to bet against Katie Ledecky.
Yeah. And I think it's doubly as fun just because we've seen these two race a few times in the past outside of like an Olympics or a World Championships in the 400 free. You know, we got to see them race that 800 free, as Brendan mentioned, at like a Florida Summer Champs, and Summer got the best of Katie there. But then in Fort Lauderdale just a couple months ago, they raced in the 400, and Katie Ledecky was a body length behind going into like the 250 or something, and then just like ate Summer up. And, ended up going 3:56.9, best time she's done in 8 years or something. And so it's like, we know both of them can race. We know both of them are elite. But I think it's a little bit of a scary proposition because I'm with you, David. I think Summer will have to win this from the front, and getting out in front of Katie Ledecky is hard to do. And I think if it comes down to like that last 400 where they're, kind of neck and neck, Ledecky's mind is a steel trap. And I think it would be hard for anyone to get the best of her, but hope it lives up to the hype. One other swimmer I'm excited to see in this race, and we'll actually see her in the women's 1500 before, is Moesha Johnson, just because she's coming off of an incredible open water performance where she won the 5K, the 10K. I think she was close to winning the 3K knockout sprint event as well, but she just had an incredible performance. She is part of that contingent who has been training in Germany along with Florian Wellbrock, who swept the open water events, went 4 for 4, 10K, 5K, 3K knockout sprint, and the team relay. But Moesha Johnson, great open water swimmer. We will see what she does in the pool in both the 800 and the 1500, where she is ranked higher than the 800, but excited to keep my eye on her as well. Let's transition to that 1500 free. I mean, Katie Ledecky's top seed by 15 seconds. We've seen this before. It's no big surprise, but there are a lot of fast swimmers behind her. We've got a handful. They're all under the 16-minute threshold. Lonnie Pallister, once again, had the meet of her life at Australian trials, 15:39 to Ledecky's 15:24. You've also got Anastasia Kirpichnikova, silver medalist in this in Paris, who represents France, at 15:40. Isabel Goss of Germany, 15:41. David, what excites you about this distance event? I know you're a big distance guy.
One is I do think that Ledecky is obviously going to win, but I think given the season she's had so far, right, sub 3:57 for the first time since Rio, breaking that world record in the 800 free, and then just the fact that we kind of know when she set that world record in the 1500 in 2018, since it was, at a pro swim series, wasn't at Worlds, wasn't at what you would think of as a big championship level meet. It's always felt on the table whenever she races, just because, her other world records at the time, obviously that this sentiment has aged kind of poorly, but it was okay, 400, 800, she was peaked in Rio. She's not going to touch those, but she didn't get us from the 1500. And it always kind of felt like there was maybe an opportunity for it. And so I always have that hope that we're going to see just what feels like should be coming of another Ledecky world record in the 1500. So I always enter this event with a little bit of world record watch on my mind out of Ledecky. And then you mentioned Lonnie Pallister, like I was talking about, meet of her life. I think she is going to be a strong silver medal contender. And then, you also shot out the other Australian, Moesha Johnson. Going back to that 800, having a range from 800 to 10K shouldn't be allowed. That's unfair. At least 1500. Just stick there when you go in the pool, please. That's just, just rubbing it. It must feel like a sprint for her, right? Like, oh, we're done already.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Bobby Fink has said that before about the 800, and he doesn't go up to that higher distance. And I do think that we're going to see a lot of, I didn't mention her in the 800, but Simona Quadarella, I feel like she's always been there in terms of those distance races, and is someone who she's kind of been there, able to challenge very so often enough that you can never really fully counter out. And then Isabel Goose, who's, I mean, the country code next to it says it all, right? Germany. Okay, cool. You're a medal threat right there, because they have been crushing it in this discipline for so long, and it is definitely not slowing down. If anything, it's picking up. I mean, even Moesha Johnson training in Germany. Apparently that's where you got to go to be good at distance. Oh, Ledecky, go do a camp in Germany, please.
Truly. I mean, it's really crazy just to see how consistent she's been, how great she's been in those events. Brendan, any final thoughts on the women's 15?
Yeah, you guys did a great job breaking it down. I'm not quite the distance guru myself, but Ledecky's going to win this, no contest. I think it's great that we got about 4 or 5 athletes behind Ledecky that are pretty closely bunched into the upper 1530s, low 1540s. That should make for an exciting medal contention there. But yeah, I think the 800 a little more intrigue, but this is just going to be the Ledecky swan song beat down that we're very, very, very accustomed to. So.
One other swimmer I will mention, shout out Crystal Kobrich of Chile. She's competing in her 13th World Championships. She is a 6-time Olympian for Chile. She's 39 years old. She has made 8 straight World Championship finals in the women's 1500 free. I think that ties an all-time record. It does. So she could be going for history here with her 9th straight 1500 free appearance at age 39, which would be pretty cool. So eyes peeled for that, but that's the women's 1500 free. That's the women's freestyle events. Now we're moving on to the women's 50 backstroke. David, why don't you kick it off? Who are you excited to see in this event?
I am really excited to see our number 1 seed, Catherine Berkoff, with that 26:97 entry time. And it feels like she is, for so long, it's just been in the women's backstroke. It's, Kaylee McEwen and Regan Smith. Every so often it's okay. Kylie Moss is going to, try and play spoiler sometimes. But for most, those two. And having Catherine Berkoff, I'm feeling decently good about her getting her hand on the wall first in this 50 back. I think that she can really focus in on this, knowing that's probably her best shot to do some serious damage. And compared to the other Kaylee McEwen and Regan Smith that are really those triple backstroke threats, that need to kind of widen their scope a bit more. Especially Kaylee McEwen might be looking to repeat her sweep of the 50-100 200 from 2023.
No easy feat.
Yeah, the second swimmer to ever do that, and the only reason she's the second is just because of the event schedule, because Chin beat her to it, and she doesn't really have any control over that.
Yeah,
effectively the first, just the schedule stopped her from doing that. And then it'll be interesting to see what Regan Smith is able to put down. Obviously, those two are just in the conversation, the women's backstrokes by default at this point. It's not going to change for a little while. And, seeing like she's a little off of what it felt like she could do at U.S. Nationals, but I don't feel like that's going to be a huge problem going into Singapore. And then I already mentioned about Kylie Moss has been right there when we talk about 100 later, consistent with some 57s lately, and clearly got the speed. And in a 50, anything can really happen. And any of the 8 swimmers could feasibly have just the perfect swim and get their hand on the wall first, but it feels like those 4 are the biggest threats.
Brendan?
Yeah. Over the last 4 years, we're looking at these backstroke previews. Over the last 4 years, there's been one name in women's backstroke that at the end of the day has really just risen above all else, and that is Kaylee McEwen. Back-to-back Olympic golds in the 100 200 backstroke, the stroke sweep, as we mentioned, in 2023. Really putting together a resume. I mean, you stack her resume against all the other backstroke greats of all time, and she is right there. And it'll be interesting now that the entire world gets to focus on the 50 heading up to LA. Her path becomes maybe a little more difficult now that people like a Catherine Burkhoff have a real chance of really just honing in on the 50 and maybe extending up to the 100. And they can try and knock Kaylee off of her lofty perch. But this is the 50 back. I think it's great that it's so tight. I mean, there are 5 or 6 athletes that are within 2 or 3 tenths of a second of each other. I like Catherine to win this, but also Kaylee has just an incredible clutch gene. And Reagan is kind of hit or miss with this. Like, even when she misses, she still tries to find her way into a medal position. But she recently broke the short course world record in the 50 backstroke, if I'm not mistaken. She reminds me a little bit of another American backstroke great, Ryan Murphy, in the way that she swims this, where in America, we just have this silly little notion that 50s don't matter. So when you have these elite athletes that step up for this 50, they just kind of let it fly, and they're just kind of, no holds barred, and they really just let it go. So don't be surprised if Reagan is going down there to the touch and she's challenging for that gold medal. So.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think it's going to come down to those 4 swimmers. It's interesting that Kaylee McKeown was good at Australian trials, but I don't think she had to be great. I think Kylie Moss broke the Canadian record in the 50 back 27:13 at Fort Lauderdale, and then didn't repeat that time at Canadian trials. And then Reagan seemed to be just a little bit off of what she might have liked to do in most of her events at US trials, I think. And so it seems like those 3 swimmers particularly have a lot of room to improve. I think Burkhoff had a great trials, and I don't know how much room she has to move up. So if anything, my intuition would say, these 3 stalwarts of McKeown, Moss, and Smith are going to move up slightly, and I see them fighting for medals, but it's also a 50. Anything can happen. Great Britain's Lauren Cox has been 27:15 this year. You have a slew of up and coming talent behind all of those swimmers, and so we'll see if any of them can make some noise. But overall, I'm echoing what you said. Those 4 swimmers look like they're in the driver's seat for this one. And it's not much different in the 100 backstroke. Brendan, I'll let you lead this one off, but I think it's pretty similar.
Yeah, there are 457s, and I think those 457s are the ones that really are going to be the ones challenging for the medals. Obviously, I think it's great whenever there's world record holder versus 2-time defending Olympic champ, and they're different people. That's always going to be a great race. I was there in person for this race last year at the Paris Olympics. One of the most exciting races I've ever seen. Just 2 heavyweights going at it. The crowd was electric. I'm sure it'll be the same this year. I hope Reagan pulls it out, but it's so tough to bet against Kaylee. I mean, she just finds a way every single time. I'm going to be pulling for Reagan. I'm going to be pulling for really Catherine Burkhoff, but every single time I've watched it. Unfortunately, I did not hear the Star Spangled Banner last year in Paris, but hopefully that will change this year.
David, how do you see this shaking out?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because we have, your point about Kaylee McKeown at Australian trials. She wasn't fantastic, but didn't need to be. I just look through the only challenge she ever got was from Molly O'Callaghan in the 50 and 100 back, which, even if she managed to get her on either of those, she didn't. But 3rd place is not going to jump over her too. And then in the 200 backstroke, when we get to that, she had a 5-second win over that. So in that position where she can be very comfortable going into it. Obviously, Reagan Smith, world record holder, got that back at trials. I do think, kind of echoing Brendan's point, especially from that 50, where Kaylee McKeown has got that just history of winning this matchup. She has got getting her hand on the wall first in these backstroke events dialed in. And I think that she is going to potentially upset the reigning world record holder again after she did it in Paris. I want Reagan Smith to win, not only because I'm in America, but because I'm in Minnesota, where Reagan Smith is from, and I got to watch her swim as an age grouper. Lost 100 free to her once with a somewhat sizable age difference, and that was fun. And so I always like seeing her get the job done. Would love to see that, but just the history has shown us that Kayla McEwen has been able to get her hand on the wall first during this matchup at the Worlds or at the Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, I looking at this entry list, you've got Smith at 7-1, McEwen at 7-3, big gap. Burkhoff at 7-8, Moss at 7-9, big gap. And then Carmen Wheeler, Sastre of Spain at 58-8. And so I think it's a good battle for gold. I think it's a good battle for bronze. And there might be some parity in there too, but once again, a battle of the Titans in this women's 100 backstroke that I think will be really fun to see how it all shakes out. Women's 200 backstroke. more of the same, but with some new names in there as well. You've got McEwen, you've got Reagan Smith, both seated at 203. Again, Reagan looked a little bit off her game in this event specifically at US trials, but I think she will bounce back and put up a good showing in Singapore. Claire Curzan won this event at US trials in 205.0, and then you have a big gap. And then you have Britain's Katie Shanahan at 207.5. And then you have a bunch of 207s, 208s, a lot of 208s. So I think it'll take 205 to medal in this event. And there are clearly 3 women who have done that this year and who look primed to do so in this event in Singapore. Honestly, you guys have any other thoughts about this women's 200 back? If you do, please go. But I don't know how much more there is to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the field. I'm trying to see if I can pick out anyone who would upset those top 3. And no names are really jumping out at me unless I'm massively overlooking someone. But I'm not seeing any, just, oh yeah, they're underseeded, they're going to jump up. I mean, you point out there is a sizable gap after Claire Curzan, and it feels like those 3. This might be one of the most locked in podiums that we've seen so far, at least on paper. Of course, anything can happen. Someone could fall down the stairs tomorrow.
Totally.
Don't want that to happen.
I mean, I think it'll be a great battle between those 3, but you've got Reagan Smith, world champion, Claire Curzan, world champion, Kayla McEwen, world and Olympic champion. It's like, it's hard. They've done this event before. They know how to do it, and I think they're just a tier above the rest of the field in this one. So let's jump to the women's 50 breaststroke, where we've got actually quite a few 29s, sub 30 swims, and then we've got also quite a few 30-point lows in this women's 50 breast. Brendan, who are you excited to see in this one?
Yeah, I think this one's a hard one because you look down the psych sheet. Ruda, the defending world champion and current world record holder, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's seated. What is that? 6th, 7th. So someone immediately that is not quite seated in the medal contention that you should absolutely keep an eye out for. I'm always pulling for my fellow Hoosier, Lily King, her swan song. Tears might be shed once her final swim is done. I can't thank her enough for how much she's mentored me throughout my career. Always grateful for her. And then also everyone's favorite story, Mackenzie Soroki, the hockey player, now qualified for a swimming world championships team. So that would be absolutely awesome if she was able to somehow find a run on the podium. She's definitely in contention for that. Benedetta Pilato, someone that I don't know if she quite had the best Olympics last year, but she's won this event before at a world championship. So she is the top seed and probably my safe pick for this event, but I could see probably 4 or 5 different women winning this event. So passed off to you, David.
Yeah, I mean, you're mirroring a lot of my thoughts here because it is a pretty close field there too. And it feels like there's 2 really strong storylines with the American swimmers. Lily King, as she's on her her last couple of swims here coming up, and then Mackenzie Soroki has another incredible storyline there too. Either of them ending up on the podium would be super cool. And then, Ruta Miletute is going to be a major factor to watch out for there too, especially in these 50s. Kind of one of those things where even as a swimmer is getting up there in age doesn't necessarily mean that you should get them out in these 50s, and specifically seen a lot of 50s a stroke too. We've seen, that just happen a lot there too. And I think the only other swimmer that we haven't really talked about too much that could be a big threat in this and in the 100 coming up is China's Teng Quinting, she's seeded second, and it looks like she's currently ranked fourth in the world this year at 30.01 from Chinese nationals, which is not too far. I don't know where that discrepancy is coming from. Is that like an opening split or from? Because it was not an Olympic year last year. Like, what 50s were you swimming that fast at 29.6? But either way, I think that she is going to be another factor to watch out for. But this is I think we're going to see like 5 people all touch around the same time, and you're not really going to have much of an idea on who had that touch until the graphic pops up on screen, because especially on the breaststroke finish when it's like underwater.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought Tang up, David, because she's honestly my pick to sweep the 50 and 100 breast. I think she has been ascending in the sprint breaststroke events. She was, let's see here, the silver medalist in the 100 in Paris, and she won 2 relay medals in both mixed medley and just with the women's medley relay at the Doha World Championships in 2024. Gold in the 100 breast and silver in the 50 breast. And so and then at short course worlds, which I know it's short course, but gold in the 100 breast, silver in the 50 breast again. So I think out of every swimmer, her trajectory seems like it's, to me, the most on point to have a stars align moment. She's also from China, and it's in Singapore. Again, home court advantage. So I like her to, again, sweep the sprint breaststrokes. I think with everyone else, Pilato and Ellie Jefimova of Estonia, Lily King, Mackenzie Soroki, there's just some question marks. Ruta Miliutite, obviously. I'm less sure about them than I feel about Tang Quinting. And so I'm going with her. I think behind her, it's a real bloodbath. But I'm also excited because the women's 50 breast is just on the last day. And so it's excitement filled. As Brandon said, Lily King's swan song, last event, last day. She's going to be pulling double duty on the medley relay, either in the morning or at night, hopefully at night. But a couple other swimmers just to keep an eye on. Satomi Suzuki of Japan is seated at 30.3. She is 34 years old, and she is a 3-time medalist from the London Olympics. She's an Asian Games champion from 2014 and 2018, but she's been doing this a long, long time. And just to see her make a semifinal or final in this would, I think, be really cool, because she has just been a stalwart breaststroker for Japan and for so long. And then someone who I think we're going to talk much more about in the 100 and especially the 200 world record holder and the 200, Evgenia Chekhanova. She is back competing on the world stage, as a neutral athlete, but we will get to see her throw down in all 3 breaststroke distances. And so I think that'll be really exciting to see what she can do. And with that, let's transition to the 100 breast. David, who do you like in this 100, and who are you most excited to see go at it?
Yeah, I definitely think that the favorite here is definitely Tang Quinting of China, like we just mentioned. That's part of the reason why I brought her up in the 50s, because I was thinking about her in that 100. She is, as you mentioned, the reigning Olympic silver medalist behind Tatiana Smith, formerly Schoenmaker, who is not at this meet. So, gives her that number 1 seed now, and then got a decent gap over Evgenia Chekhanova, who is obviously more geared towards a 200, but is very quick in that 100 as well. The 4th place finisher in both 100 and 200 in Tokyo, before she massively broke out a couple of years after that. And there's some, Lily King sitting at 4th, not that far behind 3rd. Love to see her on that podium in the event that kind of in a way started it all for her. Definitely, Rio 2016 was where she really became a face that people were recognizing for a long time to come. And Kate Douglas, just kind of like Chekhanova, more geared towards the 200 breast, but obviously has some speed, and it should be interesting to watch here too. But I do think that that favorite position for Tang feels not locked in, but I'd say she's a relatively comfortable favorite.
Brendan, thoughts on this 100 breast?
Yeah, I would definitely echo what David said, and then I'll kind of echo what I said in the 50. Ruta Militite is way down the psych sheet. Definitely in the double digits there. And then one below her is a young Australian, Sienna Toohey, who I believe has recently broken a few of the great Australian Liesl Jones. I believe she broke a few Liesl Jones age records in Australia. So that's really cool whenever we get to see age versus youth go at it next to each other. But I do think Tang is the favorite here, kind of decently ahead of the field. Would love to see Lily get up there, but just leave it all out there. We'll see what happens. And then Kate Douglas, I don't know. She's definitely, obviously, the defending Olympic champion, the 200. She's been trying to make this 100 work. I think she definitely can make this 200 work. She definitely has the sprint chops to make this one of her primary events, but this is definitely prove it time for Kate Douglas. So looking forward to probably a great race here.
To me, Douglas definitely is the wild card of the field. Like she could, I could see her going from silver to possibly even not even making the final. So I think she's the one with the most variance to me. But similar to the women's 200 freestyle, Tang Ting top seed at 104.3. If you go from 105.1 to 106.1, there are 14 swimmers in that 1 second time difference. And so, again, I think Tang looks primed to win this. And then behind her, got a lot of variance. I think any one of 14 or 15 swimmers could be there and get their hand on the podium. So I think it'll be, a really exciting race for silver and bronze, which brings us to the 200, which I think we have some similar names, but also a few different names, and I think should play out a little bit differently. Brendan, thoughts on that 200 breast, especially with the world record holder now competing?
Yeah, another great race where it's defending Olympic champion versus world record holder. If Chickanova is anywhere on her world record form, I think Kate will maybe struggle to keep up with her. They're pretty close to 2 seconds apart. But the entry times, Chickanova's at 2:18.9 and Kate Douglas in with her Olympic winning time of 2:19.2. That's setting up for a pretty elite race. And then behind her, there's a huge gap in this race. This race, for whatever reason, there just seems to be the top end, the middle tier, and the rest of the field. And there's just a massive amount of parity in between the three. I'd love to see Kate. I think this will be her first world title in 200 breaststroke long course. I don't think she won 2 years ago.
She's won 2 silvers and 1 bronze, never a gold in this event.
Correct. Yeah. So would love to see her get her first world title in this event. But Chickanova is going to be very difficult to beat if she's anywhere close to her world record form.
Mm-hmm. David?
Yeah, I think, like you said, Kate Douglas and Yevgenia Chickanova are on the psych sheet, head and shoulders above the rest of the field with 2:18.9 and 2:19.2. And then even in swims they've done this year, they're sitting at 2:20.3 and 2:20.7, and then a 2:21 right behind there. So they have a solid gap. And it's crazy that this is going to be the first time that we have seen Chickanova compete on the world stage since Tokyo. First time we're seeing her at a long course worlds, just due to geopolitical issues. And what's crazy, what I learned recently, because I did do a video preview of this, and I do still have this part written down, so bear with me, is that apparently she has been very consistently holding that's mirrored. She's been very consistently holding the top time in the world. I think it's backwards because it's on my preview. Since 2022, fastest time in the world. 2023, obviously with that world record. Did it again last year with that seed time, and then is currently holding that right now. So she has been dominant in this event, just not on the world stage. Douglas, for her part, has been able to be doing some pretty. My mic's in the way. has been doing some pretty good work with the world rank with winning events or being close there. Like, it's the fact that she was third in the world because Tatiana Schoonmaker and Chikanova were ahead of her there. Still won Olympic gold, so there is some ability for her to be pulling out some tough races, which is a factor to consider. I think this race is going to play out really interestingly when it goes down, because the big factor with Chikanova's world record is that closing 50. That was where she just kind of went away from that world record line, and that's going to be interesting to watch there. And one kind of thing to consider is the fact that she was able to perform well in Tokyo with, deal with that pressure before. I believe she went personal best in both those events, and like I said before, was fourth, very, I think, hundredths away from a medal in the 200. She's very close in at least one of the two events to getting bronze. And, she's like 16 years old, I think, then. So clearly she's able to deal with the pressure. She's entering with a different kind of pressure now, with a massive target on her back. And it'll be interesting to see how she can deal with it. Not a prediction that she can't deal with it, just that it's an unknown right now. And again, breaststroke probably has the biggest variance, short course to long course. It is worth mentioning that Douglas did completely dismantle that short course world record at the end of last year. And these two did race head to head at that short course worlds meet. And while Douglas won by a fair amount, because again, incredible in this event in short course pool, Chikanova went, and I think it was like the 5th fastest time ever, like 3rd fastest performer ever. Yeah. These two are fast in this event. When you look at the gap they have in the rest of the world, it's not that everyone else is going slow. That's for sure.
Yeah, they're just going really fast. Oh, yeah. And I think it's doubly interesting just because they seem to be similar breaststroke swimmers, right? They both have very long strokes. They're both coming on strong in the back half. So I think this race, if they go head to head in the final, which we're obviously predicting that they will, we're not really going to know. I don't think we will really know who the favorite is until like the last 50, right? Because they can both turn it on when they need to. I think they can both excel in that last 50, and unless one of them just is a body length plus ahead, it could go either way, I think. So should be a good race. We'll see who ends up with that bronze medal behind them. Again, 34-year-old Satomi Suzuki of Japan swimming all 3 breaststroke races. To me, that is just extremely impressive, and I hope she at least makes a final or 2 in those breaststroke events. Switching gears to butterfly and the Gretchen Walsh show. She is entered at 24.66. World record watch for Sarah Sjöström's legendary 24.4. And Rikako Iki of Japan is seated second at 25.3 after battling leukemia a number of years ago. She's back on her feet and back in the pool, number 2 seed in the 50 fly. But again, I think it's Gretchen Walsh and then the field. Brendan, who do you think touches behind Gretchen in this 50 fly?
I like Kate Douglas to get silver. Aiki from Japan, amazing story. She was such a great youth talent, and then obviously battling that awful leukemia prognosis. Great to see her back on the international stage. But I just think that Walsh, and I think do we know what Kate Douglas's best time in this event is? She's entered at 25.3. I really want to say she's been down to like 25.1, maybe 25.2.
I think you're right. It's down there, I believe.
Yeah. So, the Charlottesville Butterfly Group, incredible. Really, everything they do there is incredible. But I like those two. I don't know. They just both are so freakishly talented in this event, both short course and long course. Would love to see a 1-2 for the United States, but it's worth mentioning that it's going to be a pretty tight field behind them. We have a lot of 25.3s, a couple more 25 mids. So I think getting into that final is going to be a great challenge for the rest of the field.
Mm-hmm. David, thoughts on this one?
I'm actually seeing that 25.39 being Kate Douglas's best time.
That is best time? Okay.
That she went at both Fort Lauderdale and at U.S. Nationals. So
I'm making things up. All right, sorry about
that. But it is also worth noting that she has been, again, difference between short course and long course, very quick in this event during the World Cup, not short course worlds, where she was very quick. She came close to breaking the world record before Gretchen Walsh put it on the moon. And I think Gretchen Walsh is obviously the runaway favorite here. Only 2 women have ever broken 25 seconds in this event. She's one of them. The other one isn't here. And she's not a 24.9. She's 24.6. So she's not just a little bit under that mark that no one else has touched. She is a lot of it under there. And like Coleman, you said, world record watch. I do think that, I want to see Riccardo Akiki on that podium just because of that story. That has been something that a lot of swimming fans kind of followed and been aware of for a while now. And I think everyone gets a little excited when they see her in a final or, in contention for a podium position. And I do think that following what we've seen from her on, at least short course, and just she's been a solid butterfly before. I do think Kate Douglas has a shot to try and sneak up into that podium somewhere as well. But I think, the theme so far with the 50s has been, it's really close. Now it's like Gretchen Walsh is way ahead, and then everyone else is going to be a touch.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be tight for silver and bronze in this. Gretchen is obviously a step above. One fun storyline I want to point out before we move on to the 100 is Belgium's Roos van Ouderdijk is swimming this as one of her 7 individual entries. She's entered in the 50 and 100 free, 50 and 100 back, 50 and 100 fly, and 200 IM. So obviously not the only event to watch Miss Van Ouderdijk in, but it will be fun to see if she ends up swimming all 7 of these. And if so, if she can, make some semifinals, make a final or 2 or 7, who knows? But to see how far this youngster can take this jam-packed schedule. With that, let's move on to the 100 fly, where I think we've got a couple of Americans seriously leading the pack. But we've also got a couple of world champions in Zhang Yufei and Angelina Kohler right behind them who could make some noise in this. David, what do you make of this 100 fly?
We had the rematch between Gretchen Walsh and Tori Husk, the world record holder versus the Olympic champion. That on its own is going to be a really exciting matchup. We already got a taste of that at U.S. Nationals, and Gretchen Walsh, of course, has already set that world record this season by a sizable amount. First to ever break 55, just like with the 50 fly being under 25. Didn't do it by a little. She's now sitting at 54.6 and is poised to do some damage in this event. And like we said, all the way at the start with the 50 free, her kind of goal from what she said in a lot of post-race interviews is to be better at performing when she absolutely needs to in the final of an event, which so far she has been doing a pretty good job at, because that was the thing that, even her semifinal swim in Paris would have won the gold over Tori Husk. And so she can carry that forward, execute when she needs to. I think she's going to flip the script, and we might see him go 1-2 again, but in a different order. You mentioned Angelina Kohler. She is the swimmer who really broke out at the 2024 World Championships, kind of in that group of swimmers that we saw like their first decently big swim at that meet in a less crowded field and showing some serious speed. And she's always been one I've kind of kept an eye on after that, just to see if she can sneak up in any more podiums. Zhang Yufei is also a incredible butterflyer who is always a threat to compete. One thing with I haven't mentioned it yet, but with a lot of Chinese swimmers, it can be a little difficult to know what their target is for this year, because I believe that I think it's in September, October, the China National Games are happening, which apparently is a really big deal for the Chinese swimmers. And for a lot of them, it actually wouldn't be that crazy to think that they're going to have that as their target meet instead of Worlds. But Zhang Yufei is one of those swimmers that can normally go pretty quick multiple times. And so it might be less of an impact on her than it is some other swimmers. There's definitely a handful of swimmers, more on the men's side when we preview that that kind of feel like they might be a little slower than we expect them to be if that's their peak. But just something to keep in mind, kind of offsets what Coleman you love to talk about with the home time zone advantage.
Yeah, and I think that's the meet that Siobhan Howie said she's now targeting, if I'm not mistaken, as her like focus meet instead of World Championships. Now that she is dealing with a back injury or just getting back from that injury. But Brendan, I'm actually going to have you kick off the women's 200 fly, which features Summer McIntosh, as does the last two other events of this preview. But what do you see here for this women's 2 fly?
Never thought I'd see it in my swimming career, but that world record from Lou Ziege from 2009 is on alert, high alert. What many consider to be one of the hardest world records to be broken from the supersuit era. Summer McIntosh said, "Hold on, wait a minute. I'm going to get really close to that." And now, from trials until every meet for the rest of her career, it's going to be, hey, it might not be an if, but a when. I'd love for Reagan to challenge Summer. I don't know if she has that gear in her. Maybe Summer is super duper tired for some reason, has an off night. That's not going to happen. But I just think that it's really locked up. Summer is going to win this. Reagan's going to have a decent fight with Elizabeth Deckers and Caroline Bricker. Caroline Bricker, the surprise winner at U.S. trials. That was an amazing race there. She won.
Yep.
Trials.
Yep. Bricker. Yep.
Nobody really saw that coming, but we'll see how Caroline Bricker does in her first major international meet, and maybe she can find her way on the podium.
David, thoughts on this 200 fly?
Of course, it's the Summer show all the way. It's not really, the race isn't going to be between Summer and whoever's sitting in that second position. It's between her and the world record line at this point. And, interestingly, the only swimmer to ever go a 2:02. Lou Ziege skipped right from 2:03 to 2:01 when she set that world record. And Regan Smith is got a solid grasp on that second seed right there. One of the very few swimmers to break that 2:04 barrier, but it's still a ways away from McIntosh's number one seed right there. And I do think one thing that is going to be really interesting is sitting right now I really want to see her make a final. Sitting in 6th right now is UZD of China, 12 years old at a 2:06.83.
Really glad you brought her up. I had forgotten about her, but she certainly made waves a month ago, when she was swimming record times in the 2 fly and the 4 IM and the 2 IM. And again, 12-year-old swimmer who is seated in the top 8, I think, in multiple events. So really excited to see what she can do. Also of note, I'm just going to throw this out there. Tess Howley just went a 2:05.20 at the World University Games in the semifinal. Would have won U.S. Nationals, certainly would have put her on the World Championship team. Will be really interesting to see, A, if she can repeat that time or go faster in the final tomorrow night at WUGS, and then B, if that time will end up, if whatever time she ends up going, whether it's 2:05.2 or faster, will end up medaling, or would end up medaling at this World Championships, because right now both Americans have, Caroline Bricker and Regan Smith, have not been faster than that. Elizabeth Deckers of Australia is entered at 2:05.20, and she is the 3rd seed. So I think she threw out a time that would be right there in the mix to medal at this meet. So we'll be really excited to see how many swimmers can match that. And kudos to Tess Howley, because that is an absolutely massive swim for her. Moving on to the women's 200 IM, where once again, Summer McIntosh, I think, has a lock on this, bearing disaster. She is now the world record holder at 2:05.7. Second seed is Alex Walsh at 2:07.45, a walloping 1.5 plus seconds behind her, 1.7. And then Yu Yiting of China, 3rd at 2:08.4, and you've got a lot of 2:08s behind that. Brendan, in this 200 IM, who do you like behind Summer?
Yeah, I like Alex. I'd also love to see, Phoebe Bacon had the swim of her life to get on this world championship team at U.S. trials after missing her primary event in the 200 backstroke. Does she have any more room left in the tank to drop a little bit more, try and get on that podium, make the final, or hopefully we didn't see all that she had to offer, but it's definitely going to be a pretty tight battle to get into that final. A lot of 208s, a lot of 209s, and it's the summer show. Will she break her world record again? Maybe, probably. I don't know. I think with Summer, with this, she sums a lot of events, specifically the 400s and the 800, where she doesn't have a semifinal. For the 200 IM and the 200 fly, she will have a semifinal where she really does not need to, I don't want to say try, but definitely, put her foot on the gas. Does she have the experience in her to kind of, move her way through the semifinals into finals and have enough left in the tank, especially with her additional 5th event this year? So that'll be something interesting to watch, I think, from this event in the 200 fly.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because where does the 2IM fall? Oh, it's on the first couple days. So she will be rather fresh for this event. It will be really interesting to see her do the 400 free, and then it's the 400 free final, men's 100 breast semis, and then women's 2IM semis. Not that I think she'll have a problem qualifying, but it will be interesting to see how she handles that. And then the next day, she'll just have the 2IM final. So I think she'll still probably be pretty fresh for that 2IM final. But yeah, I'm excited personally to see what Mary Sophie Harvey of Canada can do in this 2IM. She's kind of had a renaissance in her career where she's swimming a lot of not very fun events, but she's an incredibly versatile swimmer. She's doing 200 breast, 200 IM, 400 IM, 400 free, 200 free. I really like the McIntosh lineup, and then some, but she's, been going best times left and right. And this 200 IM is kind of been her baby throughout her career. It's kind of been the best event for her. Would love to see her get an international individual medal, but she certainly has her work cut out for her in that regard. And on to our final event, individual event of the meet, women's 400 IM, where Summer McIntosh is the top seed by 10 seconds. David, what do you think about this 400 IM? Who do you see behind Summer?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone was expecting a hot take here, but you're not going to get one. I do not think anyone is getting Summer here. It's mostly, again, like a lot of her races, any of her races that don't have Ledecky, it's less of a race between McIntosh and the field, but McIntosh and the clock. Katie Grimes has been a pretty consistent silver medalist behind McIntosh. It feels like every turn it's McIntosh, Grimes. And then we also have, let's see, UZD does make another appearance here. She's also in the 200 IM, a bit lower on the psych sheet. This is another one where she's in striking distance of that final. And you mentioned Mary Sophie Harvey is actually seated right. That must be the biggest age difference in two swimmers right next to each other on the psych sheet possible. UZD and then Mary Sophie Harvey right by each other there. And then Emma Wyant and Freya Colbert are both some threats to watch out for. But at the end of the day, that 10-second gap in a 400 IM seed time is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's once again, I think Summer's going to be pretty dominant, as she has been the last few years on the international stage. Brendan, any final thoughts on that 400 IM?
Yeah, on the women's side, one of the oldest American records, Katie Hoff in the 400 IM from 2008. Emma Wyant has had a really strong season so far. She had a great in-season swim at the Fort Lauderdale Pro Series. Katie Grimes didn't have an amazing NCAA season compared to what many were maybe expecting, or just kind of the rise that she's had since the 2021 trials when she surprised everyone to make the Olympic team, but still someone that, she swam a great NCAA season, maybe not just as fast as people were thinking, and clearly made the world championship team, still one of the best young swimmers in the world. She is a multiple-time silver medalist in this event. So either one of them, they could really push each other to break that Katie Hoff American record.
If I'm being honest, I think it stands another year.
You think?
I do. I'd love to see it get broken, obviously, but Katie Grimes and Emma Wyant both entered at 4:33. I think they have the potential, but I just don't know if I see this year being the year for that, just because Grimes is still kind of getting used to her. I'm assuming getting used to UVA. She's been there for like 5 months now, but 6 months. And Emma Wyant has looked good, but I think she's still kind of on an upward trajectory. I feel like the year she got DQ'd at trials in the 400 IM kind of rattled her, and she spoke about that this year at trials. But ever since, she's kind of been making her way back to form, and I think this is one of the best 400 IM swims she's had in a while. But that 4:31.1 has just been hanging out for a long, long time, and I'd love to see it get it broken, but I wouldn't put money on it yet. That's our individual event lineup. I don't have much for relays. We don't have relay entries, and we certainly don't have relay lineups. My bold prediction: U.S. is going to sweep. I think the U.S. women are fielding one of the best teams they've had in a long, long time. I think Australia is depleted, and just, which is fine. It's not a knock against them. It's the post-Olympic season. We got Titmus taking a break. Molly's injured. Shayna Jack didn't make the team. You know, it's like they are not fielding their A team from like they did last year. But US, this is where the depth kicks in. US women look really strong. Medley relay, I don't think it's a question, but both free relays, I think they look like they have great shots to dethrone Australia at this point. Any final thoughts on this women's meet or women's relays heading into Singapore from either of you? Fair enough. I can't argue. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for listening. If you've been watching or tuning in out there, that's our preview for the 2025 World Championships Women's Edition. We're coming at you in 48 hours with the men's preview, so stay tuned for that. And